Well, today we have a special guest. Her name is Lauren Riddei, and we have known each other for a decade, 10 years. We were just discussing how long we've known each other. Great journey as friends with Lisa and I. And we happened to be talking the other day, and when we did, Lauren had brought up a few things. So welcome to Living Present, Lauren.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
I am too. I can't wait till you reveal the knowledge that you have gained in this field that you are exploring. You have been for a while now, actually. It's not new. And so I'm excited about what we're going to learn today. I get excited about learning this stuff. So as we were talking the other day, one of the things that you had brought up that really got my attention, that actually got you here, was you happened to say that when we were talking about health, I was telling you some of the things I was doing, intermittent fasting. I started talking about my journey. And you had said to me, when it comes to products, in your field that you're moving in, because you're an interior decorator as well, correct? And also with that, you're bringing in this building biology mindset to the table to help customers think twice. I'm assuming, I don't want to put words in your mouth, or be able to give the other options for healthiness. And you had said something about, if you can't put it in your mouth, you really shouldn't put it on your body.
Right. Right. Our skin is our largest organ. And so we want to be really careful about what we are putting on our skin. Would we eat it?
Right.
If that is a yes, then we can put it on our skin as far as beauty products, self-care products, even cleaning materials. That's pretty important to think about the ingredients that go in when you're cleaning your home.
Very good. Because you think about it, it is the biggest organ, and it's a sponge.
It's a sponge.
And we know that because you can put topical agents on, and you can put aspirin stuff on it. And we know that it goes through our tissues. And then the other thing you said to me that really got my attention was, you don't even have a microwave.
I haven't had a microwave, I think, over 5 years. And I made that comment because I'm so excited to get into this, because that is one element that people don't think about that could be impacting their health negatively. But share what you shared with me about kind of even subconsciously how you haven't been using a microwave.
Yeah. So the first thing was, it tied my memory. When you made that comment, I went back to 18 years ago when we bought this house that you're in. When we did, we had a home inspector come before we bought it, and he pulls out some Geiger counter looking device, stands in front of our microwave and says, you may want to get rid of this. It's a little old. And I'm thinking, yeah, I'm like, so what kind of radiation?
What do you mean?
Right,
old?
exactly, right. And it made me think back then, but never really took it anywhere. And Lisa already, my wife, she already has a very good holistic lifestyle. I probably was holistic resistance for a while. Like, if I want peanut butter, I want Peter Pan. I did not want the other stuff, right? Lisa's in the studio with us, smiling. And so it took me a while for me to buy into some of the stuff at a younger age. But the thing, going back to the microwave. So the microwave, when we were talking, and then you mentioned what you did, that's what means to me, that I flashed back to that time when that inspector's like, you probably want to get a newer microwave. And then I thought about it, and I said, I don't really need to use this microwave near as much as I have based on our conversation.
Right.
And I said, I'm only going to use it now on for minimal reasons. And then you had mentioned a few reasons that has been beneficial for you for not to use your microwave.
Right.
So you want to go ahead and jump in on that.
Yeah, there's two things. So one, it changes the molecules of the food. So we know it essentially turns it into Frankenfood. So why would we want to be ingesting that? Right. Which can then putrefy inside our bodies. Two, with a microwave, I remember the first time that I had used a microwave my whole life, right? Up until about 5 years ago. And I remember the first time I felt the radiation. It was like my skin was tingling, the hair on my arm started standing up, and I was like, what is that? And I started to realize, oh my gosh, it's my microwave. We have done measurements in this building biology journey that I'm going on. We have meters that can measure the radio frequency and the microwaves that can come from your microwave. And so the measurements that I have done, and do you still have a microwave here?
We do.
I mean, we can measure it. We can turn it on and see what sort of readings we get because every microwave will be different. But some of the readings that I've gotten is in the millions, 2 to 3 million microwatts. Okay, so let me give you some context. What is biologically safe according to building biology, the standards that are set, is less than 10 microwatts. Okay, so kind of do the math on that.
A million.
Yes, and that was just one tiny microwave. Every microwave has different sort of power output, so you're going to get different readings. But it just shows you, I mean, 40 feet is the minimum you want to be if you're turning on a microwave. Who's standing 40 feet away from their microwave when they're heating up their coffee? No one. So the standards we have are just a little outrageous of what is actually biologically compatible with us as humans. And that's just one instance of all the areas of building biology that I want to help educate people on.
Right. So if someone's watching, they may not go all to the extreme of getting rid of a microwave, but maybe they'll take my mindset and say, you know what, we'll use less of it.
Correct.
And interestingly enough, Lisa does not use the microwave near as much as I would have in the past until now. And the other day she was in the house and she asked, I reheated something before we really had this conversation. And she said, did you microwave that? I was like, I almost wanted to lie to her. Like, I don't want to ruin the food. And I was like, yeah, I guess I shouldn't have done that.
I was running out of time.
Right.
Rushing out the door.
Exactly.
Right.
And so going back to this, where is there a measurement scientifically that regulates this? And if it does, how do we allow this into our homes? How does the government allow this into our homes if we know that this is possibly something that can really harm our bodies?
So the regulations, the standards are not safe for our human body. So these regulations are actually, they should be outlawed because the regulations that impact the microwave also run across the telecom system, right? So the radio frequency that comes from our devices.
Right.
These standards are so high that there's no way that people's symptoms that they're getting, the brain fog, the nausea, the confusion, the chronic fatigue, because the standards are so high, it's considered safe.
Well, we could see that in a lot of areas,
right?
From water to different things,
air quality,
right?
Right.
So something had to spark you to go down this journey.
Yes.
So what was the aha moment that said, you know what, I am going to start looking at this thing different?
I love how we just jumped in with microwaves before we even talked about this. So I really want to catch your audience up. So I've had a lot of physical health challenges the last decade of my life, where I eventually started to distrust the Western medical system because I started trying to find answers to my questions, but my questions were met with, oh, well, let's just jump to surgery for this thing you're dealing with, or let's just get you on medication the rest of your life. And I started noticing that the Western medical doctors weren't open to alternative healing solutions. So in 2020, my interior design career took off. I was doing a ton of cool new projects, new builds, remodels. I was dealing in antiques at the time. But at the same time, I started to see this rise of debilitating symptoms come up. Like I mentioned, it was this kind of chronic fatigue that I was dealing with. I had some neurological issues, some memory impairment. I felt dizzy a lot of times. And so I had already started seeking holistic care at that time to try to figure out what in the world is going on with me. But I just had to keep going on with my life. Then in 2021, something really interesting happened. I had a really traumatic fall on my right hip. I was playing spike ball with some friends at the beach, as any 30-ish-year-old does on the weekend. And when I dove for the ball, I landed on my hip, twisting my spine. twisting my pelvic, and instantly I had so much excruciating pain fill my body. Inflammation surged. I mean, I just knew in that moment, when you have a moment like this just changed everything. And I've had a lot of physical injuries, physically with my body, but this was an injury that I just knew was about to just change everything. Almost overnight, Mark, I became extremely sensitive to everything in my environment. So cologne, when it wasn't offensive before, I couldn't stand it. Loud noises, driving at night, all the light. I was so sensitive to water, to air. I mean, it was kind of incredible because looking back, I now know why, which I'm about to get to. But it really was a dark night of the soul because one, I was in all this pain. I could not sit down comfortably for almost 2 years. And two, I had all of these sensitivity issues going on. So that marked a 2-year journey where I went to doctor after doctor, specialist after specialist, healer after healer, to try to figure out what in the world is going on with me. I was in so much pain and I just needed help. So out of all of those doctors, this is really interesting. I had one naturopathic doctor ask me about my environment. She said, "Where do you live and where do you work?" Because I had some blood work that came back high in heavy metals, toxins, and specifically lead. And she asked me, "Where do you work?" And I was like, "I'm an interior designer. I'm breathing in construction dust and I'm in antique stores. Like, I'm in this environment." And she was like, "You need to reduce your time in those environments because they're impacting your health and they're not allowing you to heal from this injury." And so essentially what was happening was have you ever heard of Dr. William Ray? I have not. So he came up with this analogy. It's called the rain barrel effect. And I think you have experienced this a little bit as well. It's when your body is full of exposures to something. Essentially what can happen is if those exposures keep coming at you, whether it's toxins or injuries or traumas, eventually we can only handle so much. So then your body can essentially start overflowing, and it can create all kinds of stressors, all kinds of stress responses. And that's what was happening. So I realized my job sites were kind of waving the red flag of symptoms that were coming up, these headaches and this fatigue and this dizziness because of my past history of health challenges. And then this injury was the event that took my body over the top. So my body burden just started to overflow. And I was having a really hard time trying to figure out how to get well. So here's where I connect the dots with this, Mark. That's when I took into high gear, essentially biohacking my home. So I addressed air quality, light quality, acoustics. I started lowering the EMF in my home, reducing chemicals that we talked about earlier. And then that's when I saw meaningful health improvements. My body actually started to get into a rest and digest, out of fight or flight, and it started to heal. So that's when I turned to the field of building biology because I had people asking me, just like they're asking you for help. How can you help me with my home? I'm struggling with these things and I want to do what you've done. And really I sense a responsibility. As a conventional interior designer, it's been said that designers, builders, and architects impact our health more than our doctors. And I can personally attest to this. So I'm excited to see how this pain can essentially be turned to purpose.
Perfect. Most people think when you go holistic, the first place you start is diet, right? And then you realize that at some point diet wasn't doing it. And it kind of opens the door to something that most people don't think about because we just take it for granted that everything that has a stamp on it that says it's safe is safe. And we also know that money drives the market.
Correct.
So for me, the food was part of it for me when I went into intermittent fasting and highly processed foods, staying away from those, going into more whole ingredients. And I noticed my brain fog started to leave. I noticed I started getting a little bit sharper. I noticed that my fatigue started lifting. And for me, it was about food, but you don't think about what you're talking about. For you started coming into the revelations of, wow, these products around me are emitting all kinds of stuff that are not healthy for my body. And my body's in overload, and we're literally parked in it.
Correct.
So what I would love in just a little bit, I think the audience would love to probably know, who's watching, specific things that you can start moving into, like, okay, air quality, and then water, or whatever, anything you can bring to the table to help them, make them think a little bit more about what they're ingesting or what their environment they're in. And maybe we can specify some of those going forward. But your aha moment took you somewhere that I think is fascinating, because when I heard building biology, I was thinking, what in the world?
Building bio what?
Right. So tell us a little bit about the building biology, maybe the framework of it. You had the aha moment, then you came into building biology. And then what is building biology?
Yeah, that's a great question. A lot of people don't know what building biology is. I will say it's in every major university in Europe and Asia. So let that sink in a little bit. There's maybe a reason why we don't know what building biology is in the United States. But building biology is a holistic study of humans and their built environment. It originated in Germany post-World War II, when a lot of people started to get sick from the new housing that went up and went up fast. They were using all sorts of new products, new chemicals, and people were concerned. Why are all these people getting sick? What's going on? And so there was a collective group of scientists, biologists, holistic practitioners that got together and created a standard 25 principles of building biology, around 19 categories, light, air, EMF, of what makes an environment healthy and biologically compatible with us. And so building biology is so interesting because we look everywhere else for what ails us. We look at our food, we look at, sometimes we look at medicines, we look at exercise, and yet we are not looking at our environment. Our environment is our third skin.
Right.
We've got clothes as our second, which we, should be paying attention to wearing natural materials. But our environment, the four walls we are in, essentially a home is like a body. You've got the lungs coming from the HVAC. You want a body to be breathing. And so over time, our buildings have become so airtight that a lot of those chemicals that are off-gassing are remaining inside the building envelope. So really, the unsung determinant of your health is your house.
Wow. Well, it's fascinating because when you said that, since I am in construction and design as well, I also know that you would get a heavy fine if you were to start stripping the outside of a building that was made with asbestos.
Right.
In the millions, if you're not careful. It's a very, very dangerous product that we put in our houses at a time. So the question is, how long does time take before we look back in history and go, oh, we probably shouldn't have done that? But if you stay, again, I'm kind of correlating this with my whole foods mentality. If I have a whole food mentality and I don't have heavily processed foods that I can't even pronounce the words, in some ways I'm hearing the same thing. It's just overlapping into the furniture, into our carpet, into what we wear. We have had a very close friend of ours, unfortunately, who lost their husband at a very young age to cancer. And one of the things she had told me before, she says, if you wear socks, just don't wear ones that are dyed. Like, wear natural ones. And you think about that, and I'm still wearing dyed socks because it's just too convenient not to.
Right.
So knocking on the door of convenience, I'm sure you can help with some of that, because we've talked about that maybe we've made the world a little too convenient. One of the things also through this journey we talked about, since we named the show Living Present, you had told me that the very fact that even not even having a microwave in your home made you more present, because it slowed you down so that it doesn't go into the timeline of rush.
Right.
You had to prepare foods earlier. You got to spend more time with your husband if you're talking while y'all are preparing or cooking.
The humanness comes back a little bit.
Yes.
When you take away convenience.
Yes.
Have you ever thought about it like that?
No, but expound.
Well, I had a friend that thought I was missing out on so much in life because I didn't have a microwave and I put my phone on airplane mode and, I'm not spraying myself with, new fragrances. And I just kind of laughed because it essentially does slow me down. But I think there's so much beauty in the slow because humans are moving at a pace that is unachievable. We are trying to move so fast, go so far, and we are exhausted and depleted because of it. And so I chuckle because I actually think I've gained so much more because of the simplicity of my life now. I've boiled down so much. I've had to, Mark, though, to get well out of pain and get healthy. I've had to, but I also realize, oh my gosh, I've gained so much more.
Sure. So the greatest agent of change is change itself needed.
Right.
In that we get to that place where we have no choice, but that's actually an opportunity for you to pivot.
Correct.
It gave you an opportunity to find something that can help other people. You didn't get bitter, you got better.
I had no choice, Mark. I did the math. In 2 years, I spent 1,500 hours in healing modalities. So when this doctor said, hey, I think your environments could be impacting your health, I met that with resistance because I didn't want to believe that my environments, my live environments, my work environments were impacting my health negatively and preventing me from healing. I mean, I was eating organic. I had done a lot of lifestyle changes. I was moving regularly, so I didn't want to believe her. But when I really took into account that my symptoms would onset when I would expose myself to job sites and I would breathe in the silica and breathe in the dust and I would just have all of these debilitating symptoms, I realized I had no choice. And so I had to reduce my exposures. I had to have a healthier dosage of the amount of time that I was putting my body in these environments. And so really working on my own home, where especially your sleeping areas, where we spend 8 hours of our time, getting those right helped dramatically.
Okay, so I think that's some of the fascinating stuff that probably the audience was, okay, now tell me more and what
I want to do something today, yeah.
What is a simple start to help somebody watching? And then we'll bring you back on, obviously, for another episode, and we can go into more details even later. But what would be a good, healthy start if I'm going to go across my Rolodex of all the things that I have that are in my life? Where would I want to start? Question number one. And just for the audience sake, I really want to bring this back into clarity and frame this. The whole point that we're even bringing up is that this may not be an extreme for everyone, but what they can do is bring a dose of what you're saying into their life and then let them find out for themselves how it's affected them.
Right.
And then will it bring us to a place where we can slow down, because there's no doubt the way our bodies were designed by God was the way he designed it. And technology and convenience is not going to change his mind, how we were originally designed. So our bodies are made to do certain things. We've lost strength. We've lost, that's why people, if they, unfortunately, it's known that if you're over 80 years old and you break a hip, you have a very good chance that you're not going to make it a year because we've lost our strength training from convenience possibly, or other things.
So true.
Yes. And there's other things that we have been designed for by God that we do not really pay attention to. And this goes right in line with that. There's the verse that says we perish for lack of knowledge. Knowledge is very important. It's not me. See, you have to understand, in my life, I want to run the race well. I want to get to this place in my life where I'm more present for my family. I'm more present for that person at the grocery store that I can see that needs help, that I can speak a kind word to them. I can be there for them. But when our bodies are totally polluted and our minds got brain fog and we have no headspace left for anyone else,
Right.
not even for ourselves, then this is why we have this show, to maybe we can help somebody who's watching that they never thought about this. Because I never thought about the building biology as much as I am after we talk today. So moving forward past that little frame that I just brought out would be, where would we want to start?
That's a good question.
If we're going to start.
It's overwhelming. Like, I get it. That is why people have asked me to help them, because it is overwhelming to think about all the things. And so I don't want to overwhelm anyone, because an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right? So in building biology, even if you are able to change something very small, that is worth it. Let me share the stat with you, and I'll get into a few things that folks can do. The EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, did a study in the early 2000s that the average American spends 90% of their time indoors. So I know that we spend a lot more time indoors. 90%. 90%. So we're essentially like indoor cats. Living in a synthetic world.
Right.
So then the EPA came out with a study that the indoor air quality is 2 to 5 times worse than outside. But our indoor air used to be outside air. Okay, so think about that. We're not going outside. We're closing all of our windows, and we're breathing in this air that is full of pollutants and irritants and allergens. And so one of the most like low-hanging things your audience can do is open a window. Let out some of this built up off gassing out. You need to get it out. Also, carbon monoxide can build up, right? And I know we're in the studio right now and we're breathing. So you know it's important to let out that air so we can have a better balance. I would say take your shoes off. That's a really simple one to reduce the dust load that's coming into your home. I mean, I think that is so easy for folks to do, but not a lot of people do that because it's inconvenient to take their shoes off. But especially if you have little kids that are crawling around on the floor and you just got back from a week and you tramped through airports, right? Just think about it. Think about what kind of load is coming off your shoes that now we're breathing in, because our essentially we are becoming the air filter in our homes.
That's well said.
Yeah.
So taking off our shoes,
open a window,
and then you said earlier before the show even started, or you had talked about my eyes.
Yeah.
And I told you I've taken my glasses off, and I said, oh man, I've got my font on my iPad light, and I still couldn't see it. I kind of got frustrated, and you were like, well, when did it start? And I told you 50. You're like, 50 years? I'm like, no, when I was 50. And then at that point, you had talked about blue light. So this seems like another small step.
Yes. Okay, so that connects also to circadian rhythms. Okay, so with our homes, because we're inside probably more than 90% of the time, our bodies aren't really sure where the sun is and how the natural occurrence of the day is going on. So the melatonin in our body essentially gets starved. So every day, every single morning, right when the sun comes up, I am outside kind of sun gazing for 5-10 minutes. If it's cloudy, a little longer. That could help your eyes if you aren't already doing that, but that will trigger a proper circadian rhythm. And that will also tell your body when to kick the melatonin in so that you can have a much deeper sleep. But we have to reduce kind of this, I call it junk lighting. It's the blue light that's emitting from our light bulbs, from our devices. So blue light blockers are really important. The ones that have kind of a yellow or amber lens about 2 hours before you go to sleep. Wow.
So that's fascinating, because one of the things on this journey of my health, not outside of the thinking of the building biology, would be just my health. I knew that if I got up in the morning, and I do that, and I'll get up, and as soon as the sun starts to come up, I'll go to the back deck or something. And there's something about the spatial awareness of outside, the
Yeah.
open environment where I'm not closed in and boxed in,
Right.
does something to my mental capacity. It really does. It makes me feel alive, and there's like a hope that comes back into me. Or there's actually scriptures about in the morning rising early, and in that I was like, this is pretty cool. Then you're breathing in the fresh air. It just does something for you. And I realized when I did some research of my own that when we do that, we don't allow our cortisol to spike too fast, because cortisol is that hormone that is going to store things in our body where we're in our fat cells and different things. And if it comes on too fast, your body kind of gets out of whack.
Absolutely.
So I have a red light that is actually in my room. So when I wake up, I just turn the red light on and just sit there for a minute. And I noticed that my son he had told me when he was on his ship, he's in the Coast Guard, and he walks through the halls. I said, well, what's it like at night? He goes, there's red lights everywhere. So somehow the government must have figured it out, because there's red lights all through the ship at night. That's all there are. And I'm like, oh, so that's when I started putting 2 and 2 together. And then the other thing was melatonin. And so we know that our bodies were designed because back in the day, there wasn't battery operated clocks.
We sat around fires.
Yes. And we talked, and we brought community, we told stories. But also our body's designed is as the sun begins to set, the melatonin begins to increase, saying it's almost ready for bedtime. There's so many things, so many avenues we can go down that road, but that's for another day. But I realized that as the sun's going down, my body melatonin's starting to come up, meaning that my body's starting to shut down. So that means my metabolic rate's slowing down. Things are starting to slow down. If I'm going to eat late at night, and my body's already into its sleeping
rest.
Yes, exactly. Then what I did, I stopped eating. I used my eating window, and I realized I can sleep through the night now. I did get, you may like this, I did get a grounding blanket. I don't know if you've heard of this, a grounding sheet, because most of us don't ever get grounded, and we are an electrical charged being. So we can get into deep stuff here if we wanted, but I said enough to give you enough. I triggered you. I can watch, so go for it.
Tell me more about your grounding blanket. Are you plugging it in to the earth? Or are you plugging it into the outlet?
Into the ground.
Into the
on
ground.
the ground part of the outlet. That's the way it's designed.
Right. So building biologists have a little beef with these grounding mats, which I did not know this until my building biology journey started. So you want to make sure that ground is going to the earth, because essentially when you're taking a grounding mat, I have a sauna that has a grounding mat, but I do not put my feet on it, because here's what happens. You become part of the current. And so when you put your feet, or you're sleeping, or you're standing on a grounding mat, and that's plugged into the ground, every house is grounded, obviously, but it's also part of the electrical current that's happening in your house. So that can actually cause more nervousness for some people. So a tweak that I would have you do is get a copper piece and have it run into the actual earth, not into the electrical system of your building. So the electroclimate is a huge topic in building biology. So you've got electric fields, you've got magnetic fields that can come from power lines, you've got radio frequency that can come from your iPad, and you have dirty electricity, which I know you know all about that. And we, as building biologists, we have professional meters that can show you these measurements. And you can also do a body voltage reading when someone is on a grounding mat, plugged into the wall outlet or plugged into the ground. Okay,
so someone in the audience is going, what are they talking about, right? Grounding mats and what in the world? So just back up on that, and we can wrap up our session on this and then come back and maybe bring in some more specifics to help people. But for me, what the grounding mat was all about was, I know that doing the research and everything, we have a charged body. Our heart literally produces 2 watts. And our brain does too. So we're electrically charged. And so what happens is we're always wearing shoes, right? So we're going back to the original design.
We're not on the earth.
We're not on the earth, right? So if you don't get a chance to put your feet in the sand, I even challenged myself. I found myself walking around my front yard, but then after I did, I realized my landscaper probably put chemicals down, right? So you're starting putting all that together now. So the whole point of grounding is so that when you stand on the ground, you literally discharge. You literally are able to bring everything back to unity in your body. And that's very important. And you actually will feel the relaxation. Another way some people may have experienced this before is after a lightning storm.
Right.
When lightning goes forward, ozone begins to come out, and also lightning discharges. And that's where you can come out after a lightning storm. You come out after a thunderstorm, you breathe in the air and it smells fresh and clean. And
smells
then
like ozone.
Yeah, it smells like ozone, and you go into a relaxed state.
Yes.
So, but grounding is extremely important for us because that's how we were designed from the beginning, where we didn't have shoes and our feet touched the ground. So in my house, now I'm glad you debunked that thought, because most houses, now this is older, the house that I'm in, it was built in the 70s, so it may not be true, but the houses that we have now are supposed to have ground wires into the ground that are tied into your house for the grounding purpose. Is that good, or is that still not going to?
Right. So there's a difference between earthing and grounding. So when we put our bare foot on the earth, we are earthing and we are releasing that charge.
Okay.
So grounding, it's tough to bust some people's bubbles with this because this is a huge industry. But if you think about some folks that live in a home that have knob and tube wiring, they don't have a ground. And or they maybe think that they have updated wiring and maybe they have an outlet that has a ground, but they don't know. Right. And so, there is a little bit of miseducation around the grounding mats. You get better results when you take that copper piece instead of going into the actual electrical current of your house and you put it in the earth.
Okay.
It's super important to ground or to earth, but you want to be really careful that you don't become part of the current in your home.
Got you. So to make it simple for everybody here, the best way to ground is to take your shoes off.
Take your shoes off and go outside.
And go outside. Go for a walk.
Yes.
In the ground. On the ground.
Yes.
And that will help discharge it. And then you can test things out for yourself. You know, you can, but there's something, let's be honest, there's something about taking your shoes off and going on the beach,
oh my gosh, it's the best.
Yeah, right. And so there's something about when you start stripping ourselves back down to our natural being, the way we were designed, the simplicity of it.
Right.
Our brains become calm. That's the mind part of where we're, mind, body, spirit.
Inflammation reduction.
Yes, absolutely. I've noticed that my mind has come into more of a focus spot, going through a lot of the things we're talking about. My body has responded well, helping my mind, because when my body wakes up and says, I don't want to work out today, you go, okay, I'll do it tomorrow. Big word called procrastination. But now that my mind has been healed from a lot of those things, living more in the present, it's given me the ability to say, no, body, you go and work out, right? And it doesn't have so much voice as it used to. And then, of course, spiritually for me. And so for me, I have found a great spiritual awakening in my life, where going outside and seeing the sun rise in the morning, there's a connection there with God that I just love. I can just sit out there, talk. I can rest in Him. Even when I go to bed at night, I'm hitting the bed somewhere around 8:30, and most people are looking at me like, that's crazy.
And you're getting deep sleep.
I'm getting deep sleep. I wake up, and my average wake up time is about 4 a.m. And this is the crazy thing, Lauren. When that happened to me, I thought, my brain told me, that's too early. You can't get out of bed. It forced me to go back to sleep because I was taught to control my circadian rhythm, I guess, in that way. Right. So, right. So that to me was amazing, because then what I did was I wake up at 4 a.m. and now I'm like, you know what? I went back to bed and felt terrible. Then I woke up at 6 and I'm groggy, I'm foggy headed, and I started listening to my body. Coming in tune with what my body was wanting to do. And I realized that's how God designed me.
That is key. Listening to your body. We are human antennas.
Yes, we certainly are. I think this was a fascinating starter for us, a great episode.
There's so much more to go, though, Mark.
I know. And that's why we're going to have another episode and another episode. There's so much content that I'm hoping someone's going to get out of this. And maybe, if anything, wake us up, slow us down a little bit. If anything, if the fruit of what we're talking about makes you become more in tune with the people you love, the community you're with, people that need help, but we can't see them because we need help too bad. It's the airplane mentality when the stewardess says, you take care of yourself, put the mask on you before you help anyone else. We have a society that can't help anyone else. So many people. Right. So hopefully this is going to help.
Yes, I think you're such an inspiration to people. I mean, getting back to the basics,
Yeah.
right? Like, you don't necessarily fix the flower if it's hurting. You fix the environment that the flower is in. And so I think you are modeling that and displaying that, and you're trying new things and you're implementing routines. I mean, all of it stacks and becomes habits. And I think you are a perfect example of how you used to feel and how you now feel because of some very concrete things that you have done.
That's right.
It's really incredible to be able to witness and see that in you.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm 30 something pounds down, not just weight, it's weight, but it's the whole holistic approach. So yes, I have, thank you for saying that. And I am excited about it. Yeah. What we're passionate about, we'll stick with. Mm-hmm. And then we want to help as many people as we can as we move forward.
That's right.
So, I know we're going to have you on for another episode, but just to help the audience out, if someone wanted to reach out to you, and you were able to help them, how would you be able to help someone if they wanted to contact you, and how would they contact you?
Yeah, so you can follow my journey with building biology on Instagram, specifically at House Holistics. And that's spelled Haus, because I feel passionate about the origins of Germany, really shaping this field for the rest of the world. And then you can also go to my interior design page, luluinteriors.com. You will see a sub page called Healthy Homes and House Holistics. And you can read a little bit more about the triple certifications that I'm going after through the Building Biology Institute of North America. And right now, if folks need help, I have consulting available so they can book time and talk through how can I have a healthy home? I mean, we can cover topics on air quality, water quality, acoustics, light, the electroclimate. I mean, there's so many topics that I want to be available to help people. So you can either go to House Holistics on Instagram or go to my interior design page, and we can put it in the show notes, the actual link, and you can contact me there.
Perfect. You're such a joy to be with. I love your excitement.
Thank you. I'm passionate about it because of personal experience.
And that tells me that it's real.
Yeah.
You know, so I look forward to, and I'm sure other people will be looking forward to hearing more and getting down to some specific things to help people. So thank you again, Lauren.
Thank you, Mark. It's been so fun. This is awesome.
Awesome. Thanks. Thank you guys for watching.